Hello and welcome to the program. I am Deji, and if you've just joined us, of course, what we want to do on the program today is to do a review of the 2019 presidential election. Of course, that election has come and gone. President Muhammadu Buhari won the election by polling a total of 15,191,847 votes to the PDP's Atiku Abubakar's 11,262,978 votes. Of course, as you know, the election was actually fought across the country and across the geopolitical zones of the country. But just before we do that, let's do some kind of analysis now. Look at what some of the figures were in 2015, and then we compare that to the figures of 2019. And I'm being joined on the program right now by Libero Soshoma, who, of course, would also help in providing all the analysis of some of what we're going to do here. Liberos, thank you very much for coming on the program. First off, before this election, we met, we had an analysis of the figures of 2015, and I remember you saying back then that President Buhari was likely going to win the presidential election, that what we were going to have would just be some slight movement here and there, and somehow I think that's how it turned out.
And I also told you, remember, that the battle was going to be the actual battle would be in the north and not in the south.
Exactly.
That, whoever takes the north will definitely win the election.
And eventually, President Buhari took the north, convincingly, so to speak. But let's take a look at some of these figures. Here, this is what we had, the total number of registered voters in 2015. In 2019, there you have a slight increase, not in any way surprising. Then the accredited voters this time, there's a drop.
You see, this was what also surprised me, that the fact that you had more registered voters in 2019, but the number that actually got accredited, was lower than the number in 2015.
And let's not forget, out of this number now, about 72 million or so collected their PVCs.
Collected PVCs. And so that's even the number that collected PVCs is far higher than the number of registered voters in 2015. So I was expecting an increase in the number of accredited voters, but unfortunately it dropped.
It didn't happen. And then the total number of registered votes, of course, rejected votes, I should say, very crucial, because in 2019, 1,289,000
compared to 2015, I was expecting a higher figure than this, because in 2015 the ballot paper was not as
clumsy and large
as it is. And then with the kind of ballot paper that we have in 2019, and then you still have this number of rejected votes, it means that, really, the voters' education was properly managed to a large extent.
And the total number of vote casts, you look at in 2015, 29 million, in 2019, less.
Yes. Like if you look at the numbers from registered voters, and then accredited voters. Also, like I said, I was wondering why the numbers dropped, and people liking it to voters' apathy and then insecurity.
A lot of people just collected the PVCs not because they wanted to vote, as a means of identity. Then the number of valid votes in 2015, 28 million, and 2019. 27 million, not surprising.
Yeah, not surprising. Also, because of apart from that, also considering the clumsy nature of the ballot paper, and so you had a situation where you have more void votes, and so if you remove this from this number, that's what gives you this.
That's what you get. Now let's. This election was about the 6 geopolitical zones, whether or not you like it. And, of course, there you have the 6 geopolitical zones. Let's start from the northeast of the country. We did, this is exactly what we looked at before the presidential election. So let's do a comparative analysis now. There you have the northeast zone. Just as you said, President Buhari, the total number of votes he got in 2015 in the northeast, 2.8 million. This time his number went up. And, of course, the PDP's number also went up. Could we now say because this was a northern candidate in the running, that's the reason why?
You remember I said being a northern candidate, and this the northeast is the zone of the PDP presidential candidate. And then also coupled with the fact that being a northern candidate, the the presence, and the fact that a lot of people, the tendency that a lot of people will come out, in the north to support one of theirs also will be there. And also this is what I think the PDP is quarreling with, that the fact that the northeast, where you have crisis, you have more votes now in 2019 than in 2015. But, looking at the statistics also from INEC, the number of PVCs, registered votes in those areas, and the number of PVCs collected. It tallied with, what you have here, because you also find out that a lot of more people collected PVC in the northeast and in the northwest in 2019, much more than in 2015. And then the awareness, actually grew.
And then just some talking points now. Not surprising at all that APC, that's President Muhammadu Buhari, lost Taraba State. He did in 2015.
Yeah.
But this time we see him getting more votes there. And then in Adamawa State, where the PDP candidate comes from, of course, not surprising that he won.
Yeah, if you look at the figures in Adamawa in 2015, and in 2019, it's almost the same figures. What actually changed in 2015 in Adamawa, in 2019 in Adamawa, is that because of the participation of more people, you find out that more people that probably didn't participate in 2015 participated also because the candidate of the PDP is from Adamawa State. And so more of his supporters would come out to support him. And so that's why you still have almost, a slight change from what the APC had in 2015 and to compare to what they have.
And the moment Vice President Abubakar was not able to defeat President Buhari here comprehensively, that was a clear point.
It was a clear point.
Something was wrong.
And if you also remember, he
was going to struggle in the
lost
election.
His polling unit in Adamawa also. And so it was a pointer to the fact that he was going to struggle in the election. And then also in Taraba, you notice a slight increase in Taraba for the APC candidate. Mind you, we talked about the power of incumbency, because the president of the presidential candidate of the APC, being a sitting president, will have projects to campaign with. Unlike the PDP candidates whose campaign promises will be based on promissory note, but this one will be more about continuity. And so that's why you see there were a slight increase here, but then the being a state occupied by a PDP governor, so the PDP was still able to garner the more votes than they got.
Let's look at the Northwest. That's like the almighty zone, if you like. And, 7 states in that zone. And everyone was looking up to this zone, that whoever was able to do well in this zone was likely going to win the presidential election. And that's the way it turned out. President Muhammadu Buhari, of course. But then you look at the number of votes. Compare that to what he got. Compare the number he got in 2019 now to... President Muhammadu Buhari actually lost votes in the Northwest.
Yes, exactly. So that's what I wanted to say, that for me, the presidential candidate of the APC, President Muhammadu Buhari, actually lost votes in the Northwest. And moreover, I remember I told you that in Sokoto State, for example, if you remember in 2015, all the political heavyweights in Sokoto were with him in 2015.
But this time, the governor of that state.
The governor of the state moved into PDP. And so that also definitely will affect some of his votes in that state. And then also, if you remember in Kano, even though in Kano, he's always been, one of his mainstay, but in Kano then also, all the big wigs in Kano were with him. But
he still did well in Kano, yes, 1.4 million.
Yeah, he did well, unlike 1.9 million that he got in 2015. And so in 2015, you saw PDP had 215 votes. That's
but other than that, couldn't we also say that because in 2015 you had a candidate from the south who was contesting?
Yes, I was coming to that also, that if you look at also in 2015, apart from the fact that the candidate was from the south, also he was a sitting president who had a favor to dispense. Now, if you look at the APC candidate, the sitting president also having favors to dispense, but his major opponent also is a northerner, and so that also affected his chances.
In the Northwest,
in the Northwest, where he's from. The same way it affected the PDP candidate in the Northeast, where he's from.
Let's take a look at the next North Central Zone. The North Central Zone is one zone a lot of people predicted President Buhari was going to struggle because of course, the headsman issue and all of that. But it's like it really didn't have much bearing when you look at the results.
Yeah, if you look at, a lot of people had thought that Benue Benue and Kwara, Plateau, Benue, Kwara, Plateau,
yep.
there were going to be changes, like you said, considering the herdsmen crisis and all of that. But if you look at the result, really, nothing significant change. If you look at Kwara in 2015, the same 302,000 to 308,000 here, the same 132 then to 138 for the PDP. And then you go down to Benue. Even though the PDP clinched it, this time, unlike before, because then you had even though then the current governor who just moved from PDP to APC. And then you had Barnabas Gamade also.
George Akume,
all of them. But this time around, the governor moved back. And so that also affected their chances.
So you just have a slight movement here
You had a slight movement, which was what we said that time, that we were definitely going to see numbers change in Benue. But Nasarawa was a surprising one for the APC. It was not a surprising one for the APC. Even though, when the PDP was, a much more larger party, it was consistently, they are consistently won Nasarawa State. But this time around, because you had a sitting governor there, and then, but then in 2015, the PDP clinched Nasarawa.
Yeah, exactly.
But for the governorship election, the APC won it. But for this time around, like we also admitted, you have a sitting president whose campaign promises, coupled with the fact that the governor was from that state, whose campaign promises would be, about, continuing the programs that had already been started. Yeah. And mind you, Nasarawa also, even though they had, some of these crises, headman crisis, but it was not as pronounced as it was in Benue.
Plateau is not a surprise, if you ask me.
Plateau also, it's not a surprise for PDP because, just like Benue, you've had consistent, religious...
APC lost it in 2015.
APC lost it in 2015. Even though they clinched it in the governorship election, but they also lost it in 2019 because of the consistent religious crisis, settlers and indigenous settlership, and then the farmers' headers crisis also.
Okay, let's quickly look at the next zone.
And then quickly, before then, the FCT consistently, the PDP had consistently won, the FCT in 2015 and then 2019 also. But people also are alleging to the fact that, the FCT being a capital city, is one of the hardest hits in this 4 years of APC's administration. Where some of, what they were used to were no longer there. But I disagree with that.
But Southeast zone, generally speaking, the APC doing well this time. You did say that, when we had this discussion before the presidential election, that there was every likelihood the president was going to do better than he did in
because in the Southeast, before the 2015 election, he was relatively unknown in the Southeast. And then becoming a president also whose party, to a large extent, you can say, had, won some members in the Southeast. Then definitely, I did say that they were going to do far better, even if they are not going to make, a strong show, but the required 25% that they didn't get.
Exactly. Look at the result.
Unlike
in 2015, the PDP got 2.4 million.
Yes.
This
and
time
so what basically happened, it was like the APC, just took about 300-something thousand votes from here, into their fold. And so that conveniently gave them the required 25% that they needed in that zone. And then also, coupled with the fact that you have there were complaints of card readers malfunctioning in the Southeast, and some people also not being able to vote. That also dropped the numbers from here, unlike where you had 2-something million.
So the APC got 25% in Imo, they got 25% in Ebonyi, and 25% in
Abia. And so that was just all they needed. They didn't expect to win any election in the Southeast.
Especially when you have Peter Obi as the vice presidential
candidate of the PDP.
The South zone too, almost the same thing. Not a surprise if you ask me.
Not a surprise.
Surprise in the sense that the APC was able to pull this number.
Yeah, if you remember in the 2015, you take Delta and Rivers State. The numbers that came from Rivers State, 1.4 million, and in Delta, 1.2 million. If you look at this time around, the numbers dropped drastically. In Delta, 594 to Rivers, 473,000 votes. So that also affected total number of the PDP here, where it was 4 point something
and just
million
look at
before.
Delta. The president got 48,910, and this time
around, yes, because also, if you remember, the then governor of PDP in Delta State moved into APC. Yeah, because it now became an appealing platform for most politicians in that state.
And another one to quickly talk about, Bielsa.
Yeah.
5,194. Look at the number now.
Then if you remember, the sitting president was from Bielsa State.
Yes, exactly.
So it was almost like a taboo in 2015 to have pitched tent with the APC. But now, the candidate is no longer from Bielsa, and so you also have a Timi Presiva who has been, a strong supporter of the APC in Bielsa. And so definitely these are ways of also showing, how much relevance they have in their state. And then for Akwa Ibom also, Akpabio, who was in PDP, then also moved into APC.
And we can see the
effects.
So you
saw the effect.
Cross River?
For Cross River, yes. For Cross River,
you have some big wigs in the PDP.
Senator Udoma Egbe, also who was in PDP, also moved into APC.
And then you have is it Senator Eno who?
Yes,
who was,
and so that also affected the number. And so what also, if you remember, in 2015, the total number of registered voters in Cross River, the total number of votes for PDP was about 414,000.
But this time 295.
This time 295. And so if you add this number to this, and then you put this together, it's almost just a slight, difference that you have, give or take the voided votes or the cancelled votes in those areas.
Okay, let's look at the southwest zone.
Yeah,
that's one zone that everyone was looking
at. I had also said that this zone, being one of the very sophisticated, zone. One of the zones with the very sophisticated
and somehow
voters,
it played out that way.
Yeah, if you remember, in Oyo, apart from the 2015 election, Oyo from 1999 had never returned a governor. Ajumobi was the first governor to have been given a second chance in Oyo. So, but I know that in 2019, it wasn't going to be that easy, But then in Lagos also, look at the figures in Lagos. In 2015. It was a very tough one in 2015. And the figures actually dropped.
And I think actually tried to have pulled this number.
In 2019, this number...
Oh, sorry, this is Jonathan.
Yes, that's Jonathan.
Yeah, you're right.
Because if you remember, when the election were postponed in Lagos, the then President Goodluck Jonathan had cause to visit Lagos and, did, do a tour of Lagos. Unlike now. But what happened in Lagos also, because of
drop in the number.
Yeah, because of late arrival of materials in Lagos, it also affected the number. And so also coupled with the fact that some votes were cancelled in certain areas.
Are you surprised that Ondo would go to the PDP this time?
Ondo, I was very shocked.
Crisis
yes,
in the APC.
I was very shocked that Ondo went the way. In fact, it was the first result I saw from the Southwest, and I was taken aback that the crisis in the APC affected the result in Ondo. Unlike, even though it was a slim margin, also in 2015. But also, if you remember, if we, give or take, in 2015, it was anything but PDP. But for 2019, a lot of people were looking for alternative. Exactly. And the zone being, a sophisticated zone with, highly intelligent voters, you could definitely see that the numbers
Ekiti is not a surprise. If
Ekiti,
the PDP won it in 2015, but...
because now also you have a sitting governor of the APC in Ekiti. And then coupled with the fact that you have Ayo Fayose and Senator Lujimi, who I also mentioned at that time, had crisis. And so that also would definitely, I did say, would affect.
And we can clearly see when you look at the total number of votes scored by the candidates now, you can see that the APC dropped votes, a lot.
About
and the PDP also dropped. But because the voter turnout low across. So
that's also affected the total number of votes.
Exactly.
The PDP dropped vote about 100,000, not up to 100,000, and then the APC actually dropped close to about 400,000 votes in the Southwest, and which wasn't too good for them.
Good. Okay, Libros, thank you very much and for coming on the program. But this is just a summary of the entire result. APC getting 15.4 million, the PDP getting 12. That's in 2015. Yeah, this is the difference. We did talk about that.
Yeah, which is why, for me, permit me to quickly say, when I looked at the slides and I look at the figures and I look at the consistency from 2003 to date, which was why some of us did advise that what I expect the PDP to do, looking at all the figures and the percentage and the consistency, what I expected them to do was, all of the hiccups or the challenges they noticed with the election, I expected them to collate them and find a way of making them a talking point. Let us, begin to discuss those issues around INEC. Going to court to challenge all of these will definitely not help develop our electoral process. Even though people are saying, as lawyers, the best way to develop it is to challenge it. But if you look at the consistency and the number...
You guys need to make money too.
It shouldn't be about the money. It should be about the interest of the larger country.
And something
really.
very quickly, because we're actually out of time, very quickly that we need to talk about. In 2015, we didn't have the number of parties we had this time. In 2015, the PDP and APC, of course, accounted for 96% of the entire votes cast. This time, 92%. So what were the other over 70 political parties doing?
What this, clearly shows is that we have two political parties. All others are just pretenders. And so the earlier we begin to build a structure around those two parties, or maximum a third one, the better for us. It shows that you can be popular on social media, you can be popular on Twitter, but when it comes to actual politics, it's a different ball game altogether. And then also, for this attitude of everybody wanting to be president, you can start by being a councillor and then grow from there.
It was just terrible that we had about 73 presidential candidates for this
and
election.
At the end of the day,
that's the reason why it took a long time to call the
all
results.
of their votes put together, could not, match or equal the number of the votes gotten by the first runner-up, which was the PDP.
And then you look at the guy who came third in the election. A surprise to you?
Yes, it was. It was
a big surprise.
Because what would have expected to see?
There were people like Shore,
the Shores,
Mogalu, and
the Mogalus.
They all came. They were just nowhere.
It was quite shocking, and that it showed that it's not about Twitter.
The PCP candidate was not.
People also forget the fact that, yes, in America, a president can be popular on Twitter because, talking about educated voters, but here, it's a far cry from. And that's why when we talk about, electoral reform.
Quickly, what do you think should happen to these political parties who didn't do well?
That's why I say...
Because the law says you can't disqualify.
Yes, but there's need for us to begin to kickstart a process around, all of these issues. And let's find a way of merging all these political parties. Most of these political parties exist in briefcases. Some of them, the chairman is a presidential candidate, and on the day of election, or a few days to election, you see them, all of them adopting a presidential candidate of another party. And so for me, after INEC had spent money printing ballot papers with your party's name on the logo, and then you're adopting another political party, it doesn't really make sense.
It doesn't make sense at all. Libra Sushoma, thank you very much for coming on the program.
My pleasure.
And for your incisive analysis as always. We'll take a short break, and when we come back, we'll be discussing inconclusive governorship elections in some states of the country. Stay with us. On Deji 360, we don't just ask the questions. What is wrong with amending the Constitution the way the National Assembly members have been doing it? We seek answers.
Constitution is constituent.
Our problem is not lack of laws. Our problem is lack of the willpower to implement our laws.
Answers that provide clarity.
While we negotiate, we should try to make it a point that the girls must be complete.
The clarity you need to make informed judgment so that you can make the right decision and take action. People are saying it is you politicians that are responsible for this, that you are the reason why this is happening.
All these dollars that call themselves governors in this country.
I wish we had people like Tony at the National Assembly.
God forbid that I go to join that
Deji 360, providing clarity to issues.